Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Roll Call. I'm your host, Joseph Giacalone. Thanks for joining us this morning. If you're new to Roll Call is when the cops get in the morning or the afternoon or the evening and they get their assignments for the day, they get their cars assigned, and the sergeant or lieutenant keeps control about what's exactly happening that morning. So, if you want the pop culture reference, of course, Hill Street Blues and the Be Careful out there. Today, we have a returning guest or a returning offender, let's put it that way. Dave
Yeah.
Sarni. Dave Sarni. Hey, listen, Dave, retired NYPD detective. Welcome back to the show, Dave.
Thank you much. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Mike is in the room. He said he wants to figure out how he's going to sabatage the show today, so he's working on this.
Oh,
But
he'll find a way.
last time,
He'll find a way.
last time we left you there all by yourself. If you remember, the whole thing went kaplooey.
I didn't know. Yeah.
So we will hopefully none of that stuff will happen. However, I asked the audience what they'd like to start off with, and they said the Richie Henderson case. Excuse me. Richie Henderson was an NYPD school crossing guard, and I have his. I'm going to share the screen because I have the photo of him. I want everybody to see. Just give me 1 second. All right, there he is.
Yeah.
So, Dave, tell us how you knew Richie, right?
Yeah. I do school security with the school he works at. He's been there was there almost over a decade at this point. Nicest guy in the world. Kids loved him. He was well loved. He was one of those guys that you always looked. There was never a bad day in his world. Never a bad day. And he lit up those kids' lives. And that's one thing it kind of bothers me for the fact that what happened to him should never have happened. And him being shot and killed on a train station, doing what he normally does, is trying to keep the peace in a sense, is a tragedy on many grounds. How he affected the school, how he affected the kids, and it's been something that unfortunately there's not been a lot of movement on. I mean, it happened in January, mid-January, after he goes home after a playoff game, watching his friends. Guy gets on the train, someone's playing music, altercation starts between the music player and this individual. Shots ring out, he's shot, he dies on the train, and all you have is this photo out there. And it's been over almost 6 months now, and there's been no movement that we've heard of. And we're hoping that sooner or later we find who this person is, because it happened in Brooklyn.
Right, and at the Franklin Avenue station, right? There's a dispute. Like I said, right? You said before, there's a dispute, and he tries to intervene, and he gets shot for this trying to intervene. I have the suspect's photo from the Crime Stoppers unit from New York City Police Department. I have it on the screen now. That's the individual that they're looking for. Tell us a little bit more about Richie.
A young grandfather. What I know him from work. My relationship with him was limited in that sense, but to see him do his job, it's like, oh, he's only a crossing guard, but he did the best job he could doing what he did. Kids loved him, and it's been a real loss for the community at large, for the school community that's been there, for his family. It's something that you want to see the person responsible, be arrested and brought before court and serve what punishment he deserves. But Richie, never would have had a bad thing to say about anybody or did anything to deserve something that to happen.
Yeah, no, it's and unfortunately we hear these stories over and over again, and you have the situation where good people get involved and they try to do the right thing, and it ends up terribly. And then to have this guy still out on the loose, I mean, we're talking now, we're going on almost 7 months, and New York City, we need to find this guy so that there's some justice here for Richie. I mean, I watched some interviews with his friends, right? They interviewed his friends on the Post, and they had that. And I tell you, boy, this guy must have been a real special guy, because his friends talk to him talk about him like, you could see this. It's like you could see their light when their eyes light up when they talk about him, and it's just an absolute shame.
the kids that when it happened were absolutely devastated. It was a devastating moment for the school. And he was so loved and beloved by both parents, children, and staff that there I believe the city council is going to name the corner where he worked, and as a memorial to his work there. And that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot how that moved so quickly by the parents and the push for the neighborhood to give this guy, the accolades he deserved. But it doesn't matter. I wouldn't want my name on a billboard or a sign. I'd rather him be with his family. But
Yes.
let's see what we can do to find this guy.
And they also had an organization created a GoFundMe for him too, for the family to help with funeral expenses and everything else. And it's just it's really sad.
The outpouring was phenomenal in that sense. The school stepped up, numerous people stepped up, the parents of these kids stepped up, staff did. Amazing what you could see that the love of this person was there. It's just to see no movement, and no one's found anything. This is all we have. This is all that the police department put out. So they're still looking for the radio. I don't know if they ever spoke to the guy who had the radio initially. I know they spoke to the witness, Richie's friend, who was there. As far as camera work and surveillance video, this is what happens when you talk about old school detective work. You're limited. This is all you have right now. There's not been any movement on this case. I don't know if there's ballistics have been recovered from this, and we're looking to hopefully find this guy.
Right, and the number is right there on the page, 1-800-877-8477, or the TIPS for tips. That's the NYPD Crime Stoppers numbers. That's the actual number that we want everybody in New York City to call when you have information on a case. It's a single location. Something, Dave, that New York City does do well. I mean, yes, we work there, so we're going to make it sound like we we're a rah, but the issue that comes down to is they really do a good job with the tips, because everything gets funneled into one number instead of having all these numbers all over the place.
And to even bring it to another point, one time I'm working, they had me working at Crime Stoppers because of a staffing issue. And there was an incident of a sexual assault of a kid in a laundry area in an apartment building. And I was on the phone receiving a tip from somebody. And it does work. There was a workup done on this guy. This person of interest turned out to be the perpetrator. So, the work that Crime Stoppers does work. It's, police need assistance from the public. We can't do it by ourselves.
And it's a great program, and you wish that other cities would do the same thing in regards to having that sole contact, right? So I've seen wanted posters get put on TV, and it's got the detective's cell phone number. It's got this, but what happens is detectives retire, they get promoted, things happen. 6 months from now, a year from now, someone finds information, they call the number doesn't work anymore because it's sitting in a drawer somewhere, right? So the point is that you got to get that one single point of contact, and I try to hit that home in so many cases, but it just seems to fall on deaf ears. It kind of frustrates me.
Yeah, and now we have it on that you could do online. You could actually send something, text it to Crime Stoppers. There's a lot of ways in which to contact, and it works. It does work. It's a benefit that nobody realizes, that a lot of what these cases that are cleared, that are make arrests, are based on these tips that come in and the work later on. It's not just necessarily a tip, but it gives us a lead to continue on with the case.
Right, and it's also an indication that the community police relationship is actually pretty good, right? I know we get this, the police community relationship is terrible, but then I point to cases where the tips are rolling in on certain cases, and it's just like you just point to it and go, who's telling us that story, right? That the cops and the community aren't in a good way. I mean, it's usually people who would have an axe to grind or an agenda to pull, and it kind of annoys the hell out of me when they do that.
It's the quiet, the thing no one talks about. You always have this loud group, vocal minority saying X, Y, and Z about the police, but there are people who, you've seen it. You work in the street, and you'll get that "be safe, officer." doing a good job. Don't listen to that. You do have, it's just you don't see it. It's not immediate attention grabber in a sense.
Yep. And Raul has just shared that a tip line to the anonymous tip line. So thanks, Raul, for doing that. It's in the chat if anybody's interested in that. So we've had a couple of terrible cases in the news also too, but we want to talk about some crime stats. Let's get into some crime stats, and then we're going to get into the Arkansas mass shooting that just happened, and I want to touch upon the Jocelyn Nungary case, the young girl that was killed in Houston. I saw that on Grizzly True Crime with Gisla, and I was just like, I couldn't believe what we were hearing. But we're going to get to that a little bit later in the show. You had mentioned about the crime stats, right? So the crime stats are getting released slowly, and they look pretty good, but there are some caveats that we have to tell people about. But just from your first impression, Dave, tell us what's going on with the crime stats. Because I have a the Explorer on. I'm gonna share it with the screen.
Well, you can look at one thing: murders are down. That's always a good thing. Murders, though, are one of the fewer crimes that happen. Most major crimes, like violent assaults, thefts, and the like, seem to have gone down. But you know, and I know, there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. You can manipulate statistics. The recovery of those stats. So I believe the NYPD was delayed in 2022 or 2021 with forwarding their information to the FBI. When you're seeing these investigations, say, or these cases or these complaints, if there's no complainant, there's no crime. So that's what you have to look at. If people aren't making complaints, given the fact of the anti-police sentiment, the fact that they're seeing all these lower level crimes, these quality of life issues, and they don't think that the police can do anything, they don't make the report. I've been burglarized when I was a kid, and my apartment got burglarized. I didn't report, thereby there was no crime. So that didn't exist. Is that one of the things that's coming into play? I know some police departments close at midnight. There's no one come. There's maybe the county sheriff's covering. So are those reports going to be generated? Lower staffing. You have fewer police officers out there. Pittsburgh Police Department closes like between the hours like 2 and 5 because of manpower. San Francisco Police Department does a prioritization. If there's no immediate threat to the life and safety of somebody, they're coming. Oakland PD. My friend had his car broken into a few years back. They never showed up. 3 hours they waited. No one called back. Nothing. So when you see these stats, it's a gauge, but it's not an absolute. People see the crime going on. It just yesterday, one of my old partners, there was multiple stabbing on 14th Street, First Avenue in the East Village, the 9th Precinct. Yep. Has been a renowned area of drug activity. When I was in narcotics, there was a lot of methadone clinics there, drug dealing, and who knows what the result is of that, and what the reasoning for the assault or the death. So people are seeing this on a regular basis. It's not. A number is a number, but if you're a victim, you're not a number. And I think that's what we have to really focus on. I know people are like saying, look, the stats are down. We're doing great.
Yeah.
Are we really? And that's the thing I'm worried about. You walk around these train stations, you see people are not feeling that the safety is there. They feel their safety is an issue.
Well, there's some other issues with the stats too. So in 2021, the FBI turned over from the Uniform Crime Report to the National Incident Based Reporting System, or NIBRS for short. And the rate of police departments providing information has been abysmal. So when we hear that murders down or robberies are down, are they really? Because according to the latest statistics, 29% of the police departments haven't reported any crime. So you're talking about nearly a third of the country didn't report crime. So how could we say that crime is down, right, when you only have 2/3 of the picture? And here's the other issue. Now the Crime Data Explorer. This is the FBI's new website in order to do crime. I'm going to put the link in the show notes for everybody. But this here is just a homicide. I'm going to make this a little bigger. I'm going to drop us from the screen, Dave, so everyone can see this a little better. Mm-hmm. So if you look here, folks, this is 2019. right? Now, I know people, specifically politicians, like to blame the surge in crime on the pandemic, right? They want to blame it on the pandemic. And I've been telling people for years that the pandemic has nothing to do with it. And for those of you that still fight me, here are here is the data from the FBI's Data Explorer. 2019. Here's the issue. We don't go on to lockdowns until anybody remember the date? It's easy to remember because it was March 15th, the Ides of March. Look at this spike in homicides from 2019 just to January 2020. March is about here, and they still went up after that. But if you're telling me, look at this spike here compared to this spike, this is an uphill battle. Right, straight up parabolic. So when people say, "Oh, it's the pandemic," this is just the pandemic here. This is when it started. And what happened during this year's? You had the George Floyd riots that were happening in May. You had the anti-police movement. You had the depolicing movement. You had all those things. Cities like New York were already letting out prisoners without, through all this criminal justice reform before it even started. And now we're here. So to say, yeah, the homicides are down, yeah. But you know what? We're nowhere near where the spike started. And that's what kind of gets me crazy, Dave.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Because this is the problem all the time. It's like, oh, this, that, but no one wants to look 2-3 years past prior. And not only that, you said it, and you said it perfectly correct, Joe. The reporting in general is faulty. It's been reported. You remember, when complaints happened. I'm just talking about initial complaints. They could be derated at the scene, where it's like, oh, it's really not a robbery. It's an assault and a petty larceny. So you knock it down from that felony to misdemeanor just on that aspect. And you're talking about numbers. You can't say, and I hate to say this, police department is trying to do the best with what they have. But when you tout this on a national level, saying crime is down, it's a falsehood. It's a falsehood. People don't feel safe because it's not just, oh, the numbers are down, but they were giant. They were huge. It's a huge spike. And the police departments have been affected immensely. Staffing has been down exponentially. We're doing the mirror test to get people on the job now. For those who know a mirror test, you put a mirror under someone's nose. If they breathed, you're a candidate. That's how bad it's gotten. And I talk to cops, and I see them all the time, and they are inundated with work. Detectives are at the brink, and you're going to say, "Oh, well, the numbers are good." That's not what the reality is. Numbers are great. You could do a number. I could save $1 million. Great. I have $1 million eventually somewhere, just not available right now. Just like you see this homicide rate, it means nothing, and that's unfortunate.
But and the reason why we wanted to talk about this is because there's so much manipulation and misinformation that comes from the politics and some of the news stations that it just drives us crazy. Now, Dave and I, of course, we did this for a living, but being teachers at the school, we these things come up a lot, and it's not a left thing or a right thing, because I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. The perception that crime is up is a real problem for anybody. I don't care who's in charge. If the perception is that it's up, it's up. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And people feel it. People don't, when they were going to do this congestion pricing in New York City, a lot of people saying, I'm not coming to New York ever. I'm not going on a train. I'm not going on a subway. I'm not going in the neighborhood. You just see reports in the New York Post of 8th Avenue between 34th Street and 38th Street in Manhattan, Midtown Manhattan, which is a block away from a precinct. The crime there and the out and out lawlessness that goes on in that area, the Penn Station area, people notice it, people see it. So if you're going to say, well, crime is down, I could throw in a number and I could manipulate the numbers as we've seen. And not only manipulate them, you don't have all the numbers. The NYPD was delayed in reporting to the FBI I think a year or two ago. So it's not necessarily accurate. It's accurate to what they have, but it's not accurate to what it is. And I think that's what we have to really look at.
Yes, and like I said, if politicians want to take a victory lap that homicides are down, let us know when you come back down here to 2019 numbers. Then we can talk about it. And if you really want to go back, look at 2014's numbers, right? It was just, we're not talking about ancient history. We have lost crime in New York City and elsewhere going back almost 20 years. When people say, "Oh, it's not the 1990s," we were almost there. We were almost back in 1999 with the crime stats. I mean, that's how crazy it's getting. But I'm going to post, in the show notes after the show, I'm going to post where you guys can do your own little crime stats and look at some of these things and and do things for yourself in regards to that. You don't have to take our word for it, but you can do it yourself and see what's going on. It's just about not just, you could do that with every crime. You could do that with homicides and robberies and everything else that goes on. And Maria Torres, thank you for that super sticker. I really appreciate that, Maria. Thank you very much. If you're just joining us now, we have retired NYPD Detective Dave Sarni joining us, good friend of the show. He's been here a couple of times, and we have over 200 people now watching this live. And I know Mike is watching this and getting jealous, right? Mike will be on Friday. But he's working behind the scenes. He's doing his stuff there. Trying to think of the whole thing crash.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The plot's thickening.
Yes, the plot's thickening. So let's talk about this horrific event that happened, this mass shooting that happened in Arkansas. When, like everybody else, Dave, it's kind of like you go, oh, another one, right? I mean, that's basically what happens when you hear about it. But this one is like particularly disturbing. When you first heard about it, what was your first take on that? Because mine was like, not again.
That's what it is. It's like, again, when is this going to stop? When is, there is a major problem with people now and how they handle their emotions, whatever it is. We always, and Joe, you've seen this too, the precursors to active to these shooters. We never know exactly when it's going to happen. There may be, there might be a particular thing. This guy was probably planning it a while, making his decision to do what he did. I mean, he walked in with, 2 guns. It's the mess. It's just a mess. Again, though. Again and again and again. And when is it going to stop? Are you going to say, the gun laws need to be more enforced? And, there's issues on both sides of that. This guy apparently had no criminal record that stood out and he used a shotgun, and shotguns in most, uses hunting rifles, for hunting. So you're not necessarily going to ban a shotgun. And this is insane. It just doesn't stop. And you wish to know why. Continually, this goes on.
Just want to take a shout out to Cakes Boo, member for 3 months. Sarge has the best laugh ever. Thank you. And Christy says, like his hairdo. So I'm assuming it's not me. I'm assuming it's you, Dave. She likes your hairdo.
I appreciate it.
I'm just assuming it could be mine, though, Dave. It could be mine, though.
It could be. It's that real tight look you got going.
So and Cakes Boo gets an extra laugh in there for them too. But yeah, so just this guy. So his name is, I got it written down right over here. His last name is Posey, right? So Travis Eugene Posey. He's 44 years old. He's been now charged with 4 counts of aggravated homicide, capital offense. I just want to read out the 4 victims' names. Callie Weems, who was 23, Roy Sturgis, who was 50, Shirley Taylor, who was 62, and Ellen Shrum, who was 81. Those are the 4 victims that have passed away, but there are 11 wounded, including 2 cops. And they said that there's another victim that is on critical condition, that they're watching it. They don't know if she's going to pull through or not. The majority of the victims in this case, too, were females, generally older. But there's one victim here specifically that stands out. Her name was Callie Weems, the 23-year-old, the first one I read it out, because she was a nurse. She was off duty. One of the victims who was shot, we don't know which one, she ran to his aid. And as she's helping him, this guy guns her down. I mean, talk about a total coward. And here's this woman trying to help. And, absolutely devastating.
Yeah, there's nothing to say good about this person. There's no depths of a prison that he deserves not to be in. There's no circle of hell he doesn't deserve to be in, because the cowardly act is I don't care how angry you are at the world. I don't care how upset it is or how you feel, because this guy was on no one's radar. You went to a place you have no connection to. At least they haven't seen a connection, and we haven't heard much more about his anything about him. The manifesto is there, and we've seen active shooters create these reasons why they do what they do. And this person who just is an oxygen thief, I think that's the best way of putting it, decided that day was the day to murder people and shoot somebody who was just rendering aid. That nurse, she just did what she was supposed to do, help somebody. And this miscreant decides, I got to end her life.
Yep. And she leaves behind an almost 2-year-old and everything else that goes along with it. Here is this piece of garbage. He's right on the screen here. He actually was shot, and he's actually been treated and released, and they put him in. He's in prison right now, waiting to get arraigned, which will come in a few days. But apparently, this happens in the afternoon of this place called the Mad Butcher supermarket, and apparently, it's like the only supermarket in the town. It's a really small town, and he has a shotgun, a handgun, and the trooper talked about a bandolier. So this guy had shotgun rounds all across his chest, as you know, and as he was preparing to go to war, so to speak. And there are videos. I'm not going to show you, but there are videos. If people want to see him, they can look for themselves. Rescue puppy. He's 44 years old, and and there's no. So far, they say there's no motive. They have mentioned nothing about social media or posts or anything like that. I tried to search to see if the guy had a Facebook page, and you know as well as I do, Dave, this stuff gets scrubbed like almost automatically, and you gotta be really quick in order to get that. But
nothing that shows of any connection to anybody other than it's a soft location, it's a soft target where everyone's going to congregate. So that's all you really have, and why he did it, no one knows right now, and obviously he's not saying as to why.
Yeah, he starts in the parking lot. He goes into the store. Yeah, he goes into the store and he comes out and he gets confronted when he comes out. The cops, according to the police report, the cops responded. They were actually at the scene within 3 minutes of this thing happening, which probably prevents even more carnage in that. So good way to stop these things. The head trooper, I think he was a major, also said that these cops varied in age, and he did say, I think he said all of them had military service, the cops that were in there, and he said they put it all to good use to stop this guy. They confronted him, and they also said that the cops put themselves in between him and the other potential victims, and took gunfire from them too. Like I said, 2 cops got shot in this whole thing, and it looks as if he was using the lead ball from the shotgun. It didn't look like he was using like the buckshot. So I mean, God, you get hit with one of those, it's over.
It's just even just by the look of that shot they have, that prisoner photo, you can see that this guy just has no soul. There's nothing there. Just a person, a person who does not deserve to be on this planet for what he did. I mean, that's the end result. This is nothing disgust me more than seeing this a continuing issue in the United States. And it's not just the United States. You're seeing these happen in other countries too. If it's not a shooting, it's a mass stabbing. But there has been a problem that we have had in this country of these mass shooters continually doing what they're doing, and we don't know as to how to stop it. Is a gun ban the way to do it? Is it more mental health treatments? What is it? And I mean, when we were growing up, this was unheard of in the United States, as many as we have. So is it something that we have to really look at? I know the FBI has done studies on active shooters, and we always see precursors, but we don't see as to why. And I think that's the problem. We have to find a way. Got to find a way.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? Because like I said, when we were kids, this didn't happen. I mean, this is the last 20 or 30 years. It's been absolutely parabolic. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, it could be just copycats, right? Somebody who's already on has some issues mentally, and then they see what's going on, and then all of a sudden they decide to do this too. But this one here too, look, listen, none of these things ever make sense. right? None of them ever make sense. Like you would go and take innocent people's lives, people who have nothing to do with you nor your problems. So none of it ever makes any sense.
No, that's the thing. There's no connection. There's been no nexus to the store, to him, or any of the people who've been shot and killed. So, what is the reason? You'll probably never hear it. You'll never know unless he decides to have a man. Unless they find something during this investigation of him, a perpology in a sense, background checks of him, looking at social media, any paperwork, friends, family, relatives, and seeing where this might have started.
Yeah, well, like I said, I mean, let's hope we hear the end of it because lots of times we don't hear the end of these things. We don't. There's no follow up on the investigation because why? We end up running to another one that happens or another incident that happened. I mean, there was a mass shooting in I forget where. There were like two mass shootings this past weekend at different
Yeah,
places.
and the thing is, it's just we sometimes find the reason as to why it happens, but where there's no someone just saying I don't want to, there's no backing down for some reason. This is what I've always said. It's sort of, we see the precursors, but we don't. But they've to make the perps make the decision to do it, and what makes them snap? What just makes them? Today is the day I'm going to do it. And in this case, soft target, generally easy location. A lot of people are going to be there. Afternoon. He knew what he was doing to get the most casualties for what he was doing. He went there to murder people. That's what it was. It wasn't inadvertent. It was straight out murder.
Yeah, and it's just the cops. They had the active shooter training. They had all these things. So maybe the training and all the other stuff is catching up. But until they can figure out like what makes people tick, what makes them choose a specific location, why the Mad Butcher? Is there some other reason other than just being a soft target? Because everything's a soft target when you think about it, right? I mean, anything. There was a dollar store or something next door to it. It could have been that. It could have been. I mean, it could have been a million different things. Like
Yeah,
what makes
it's
someone choose this place?
and just choose any place and sit there and actually plot this out, because obviously he was there to bear. He was there to do damage. It wasn't like one gun. He has a bandolier of shotgun shells. He's looking to do this, and he made it a concerted decision and effort to go there with this item. So today's the day I'm doing it. I'm taking my vehicle. I'm getting to that location,
Yeah,
and
and
we'll hopefully you find out why. But I will say this: police are getting better trained with, and you said it earlier, better trained at these active shooters. Uh, even this, even schools, some of the school securities are getting that active training. People who are retired detectives, retired cops do, because the fear of this happening. And the key to everything is stopping the threat as fast as possible, the response and the movement to it. Where you have an absolute aberration in Uvalde, where you had guys in Nashville, when that active shooting took place in the school, and now you have here the immediate response and bringing the fight to the shooter.
yeah, well, that's one thing that Uvalde has changed, right? There's no more. Do I go? Do I not go? I think everybody's got that. All the law enforcement has got that down. Like you got to go. It's as simple as that. And it's just unfortunately, the Uvalde thing, we could spend 3 days talking about that case. But the issue that comes
Oh,
down to is that, yeah, even in New York City, I'm sure. I mean, you do your own private security, you do all this stuff. There's talk about stuff like this all day long, right? When somebody gets fired or relieved, right? It's a big deal. They got to make sure
yeah,
that their pictures up at the front, right? Making sure that people
yeah,
don't come back. It's crazy. I mean,
yeah. I do when I do training for unarmed security, and one of the topics I always bring up is active shooter, not just for work, but when you're outside of work and what you should be cognizant of, and people have to be that situational awareness, because it may not just happen at a school, may not be happening while you're working. You have to be ready for it, and do what you need to do. They call it run, hide, fight type of thing. Uh, the NYPD calls it avoid, barricade, confront. So when you do something like that, uh, you have to be prepared. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And I have a video from the NYPD when they talk about it. It's stop the killing, stop the threat. That's the objective for law enforcement. Stop the killing and stop that threat. So we're not going to hold back. They're going to bear, and they're going to find that person and stop the killing.
Right, and I even remember right before I even retired in 2012, it was always shoot center mass, right? And then all of a sudden they're teaching you to shoot headshots because the
Yes.
guys were wearing because they had situations where they were wearing full body armor and that kind of
Mm.
stuff. So they because that was never in the training. I mean, my whole 20 years never in the training. All of a sudden, as I'm walking out the door, they're teaching you how to do headshots. I mean, that's how
Yeah.
crazy that this is getting. And
Yeah.
Shannon said, "I'd love to
There,
you
I
do a
remember.
show on Uvalde." Yeah, well, we'll do something down the road. But I also wrote an op-ed in the USA Today way back when that happened. You can go into the USA Today and just type in my name, and you could read that, or you could go to the website. You could read that op-ed I wrote about that case. But you know, the issue that comes down to is, Dave. Unfortunately, tomorrow or this weekend there'll be another one. Right? It's hazy, hot, and humid. And I always said a hazy, hot, and humid with 100% chance of homicide. That was basically the motto when you
Yeah.
were dealing with this kind of stuff. The question comes down to is just how bad is it going to be? And unfortunately, in law enforcement, that's what they're saying. Listen, it's going to happen, but how bad is it going to be? How
Right.
fast can we get there to stop it?
Yeah, because they look the average and try to say the average time is like around 7 minutes. It usually is over. But what could be done in that 7 minutes? How much damage that person can do in 7 minutes is massive. Um, and you are you going to put a cop in every corner, a cop in every store? You can't. So you try to avert it the best way you can by showing, that they're going to be responsive and they're going to act, with extreme prejudice when it comes to these active shooter incidents, especially law enforcement. We're going there, and we're not asking. There's no asking in this, and hopefully that kind of defers people from saying. But then you also have people who want to die, and so far we have seen shooters that look to end their lives at that moment. And in this case, this guy got shot. He survived, and we'll see the end result of that. But this is not the end. Unfortunately, not the end. And, we have to really take a good look at people in general and why it happens.
Yep.
You
And of course
I've seen.
the access to
It's
guns
just.
and everything else.
Yeah.
I mean, just
Yeah.
take a look. I forget which case it was where the cops actually removed the kid's guns, and he ended up getting another one. Right? I mean, this was I forget which case this was. This
Yeah.
happened just recently. They removed his guns, and all of a sudden he's got another gun,
Yeah. And
and he's doing this stuff.
yeah. And you just had the Supreme Court rule on the red flag laws for domestic violence offenders not getting guns, and it was an 8-1 decision, regardless. But that's rational. That's rational law. It's like you shouldn't have people who are involved in domestic violence to have a gun, or at least have access to a firearm. But in New York City or anywhere, can you get a gun? Yeah, it's not that hard to get a gun. This is how it works. You can get firearms illegally. It's not that hard to do.
Now, I got out. You were on. You before you got out. You had spent a few more years. What year did you retire?
I retired 2022.
Okay, so yeah, I was out 10 years already. Were they
So when I
still?
retired, yeah,
Go ahead. So yeah, what I was going to ask was,
no, go ahead.
are they still teaching? Are they still teaching the cops? Like, when you go to a DV case, ask if there's guns in the house. Do they still teach that? Because I remember that was a big
Yeah,
deal when I was a cop.
there on the DIR reports, they actually have checklists there. So you do ask. There are asking people do ask if there's a firearm. Um, so that they do. It's just and more times they'll volunteer that. One thing is he'll have no fury like a DV victim. They'll tell you everything at that moment. So he doesn't have a gun now, but I know where he has guns. So you kind of have to, that's where the rapport, in the sense, talking to these victims, get that. You see a lot of cops doing a good job by finding those guns and asking those questions.
I just hope that, of course, see, this is where I always say, we'll never have national, excuse me, we'll never have national police standards, but there are certain good practices that should be national, and that should be one of them. When you respond to a domestic incident report, and Dave had mentioned the DIR, that's called the domestic incident report, for those that might not know. If you're going to go to a domestic violence case, every cop in this country should be asking, is there a gun in the house? And that gun then has an opportunity. If there's some chance of violence or whatever, it's got to be removed because it will be
Yeah.
used.
Oh yeah. It's just unfortunately par for the course. We've seen so many domestic incidents escalate and the chances of that victim, one, prosecuting the case is minimal at times, and they'll come back. And if that gun isn't removed, and we've seen incidents where I think in Staten Island, not that long ago, cops actually went to a house. They did the right thing. They took the victim back to the house, and the domestic violence, the perp, comes back and shoots the cops. So I don't know if that question was asked prior to having the guns there, but you have to always be aware of what your surroundings are. I mean, that shooting that took place in Staten Island, I remember it was in Staten Island, and I had the cops put the girl back home to make sure she's okay. And the next thing you know, within 15, 20 seconds, her partner comes out from outside the street with two guns blazing. So I don't know if they knew about the guns being there or if this guy got guns before. But domestic violence, and Joe, we all do that. Domestic violence is the most dangerous ones to respond to, because you never know what you're going to have. It could be the victim, could be the perp could be the victim, and then maybe both victims become perps. So you never know what goes on in those things.
Yeah, well, listen, domestic violence has been a scourge in our society forever, and it was getting better, and then the pandemic kind of made it go up again. You lock people down. You lock people down with their abusers, and then the same people, the same politicians are scratching their head, going, "Why do we have so many domestic violence incidents?" You locked people down with their abusers. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, and that's this is when people, and I hate to say it, there are some unfortunate people who have lofty ideas. Politicians do not think criminals think like them, and they don't. And they think domestic abusers will just stop if they're told to stop. It's not the case. It is a perpetual cycle, and we hopefully these cycles end with the relationship ending and they both move on their separate ways. And I'm a person who, unfortunately, and my experience and yours also is, if they hit you once, they're going to do it again. Just how it doesn't change. So we want to make sure everybody's safe in their surroundings, especially the victims.
Yeah, I mean, I remember responding to domestic violence cases, and the boyfriend or the husband were there, and they would actually try to intimidate their wife with you standing there in uniform. Could you imagine? I used to say to myself, what would happen if I leave, if he's doing this now in front of me? Like, you don't want me arrested, do you, honey? I used to turn around and say, it doesn't matter what she thinks. It's what I think. I mean,
yeah.
People, it's absolutely crazy what goes on. I try to explain that scenario to people who have never entered it. Boy, let me tell you something. It's not only chaotic, but it's just your senses are like, you get your spidey senses going because you don't know where it's going to happen. Right? How many times have you locked up the husband and all of a sudden the wife jumping on your back? Right? It's just absolute nuttiness.
Yeah.
Oh, Mike has struck again. There you go, Mike. Good job. Mike is working his magic behind the scenes. So listen, folks, domestic violence is a huge problem in our country, and it needs to be addressed in so many ways. But here he comes.
Mike did it again. Mike again.
Mike, well, you know what though, Dave? It actually was good timing because the subject was really dark, so we all got a little chuckle now. So I think
we need a little cheer. Yeah, Mike pushes the button and it all goes.
He must have a little device, that little wrench I gave him.
Background too dark. Boom.
Yeah, I gave him one of those wrenches. I think I'm
unbelievable.
I'm regretting that. Yeah. CH just said mods ban Mike.
Oh my God.
All right, so there is another case. Actually, the other day I was hanging out with Gisela and the Grizzly True Crime, and talking about this case of the Giacalone Nungari. I don't know exactly how to pronounce her name, but she's a 12-year-old girl from Houston who apparently snuck out of the house. She goes to a 7-Eleven. I'm not going to get into the whole thing because I'm going to post Gisela's stream on this, and we're not going to get into the whole thing because it's just she does a great job with that. We're not even going to try. But I just thought it was worth it to talk about this on a couple levels. So she sneaks out of the house. The mother says she went to bed at 10 o'clock, and that she said the cat was going crazy at 3 a.m. and then she doesn't notice she's missing until 6 a.m. And I'm just going to share the screen again here. When I sent you this case, from that detective point of view, Dave, what were you thinking?
Oh, I'll tell you, the work done by these investigators was thorough. They did an amazing job, tracking, getting video, getting everything we need to do in this. This is another, and we keep seeing this, and it's becoming almost pattern-like when you're seeing young girls being sexually assaulted. And in this case, she's raped and murdered. This is great work by the investigators. This girl, again, with child, I'm going to say a child because somehow we missed that fact. She's 12, and she's going to want, she just, sneaks out. These guys apparently lived in the complex that she lived in. They were known to be, from people who were there, known to be very loud toward women, catcalling women. And they saw, and like predators do, they saw opportunity. They were, whatever they told her to lure her to where she was going, tie her up, rape her, and then strangle her and dump her body. You, as investigators, you take these things personally, that these guys got to be caught. These people involved must be caught. And that's why the work was done so well, because, it could be anyone's kid. And that's what you have to look at. This could be anybody's child. And you want to find these, because they'll do it again if they haven't done it already. Because again, these aren't things that just happen. The two guys decide, this is the day I'm going to make a sexual assault. They probably did this before somewhere wherever they came from, and they got away with it. And then now, luckily, they found that detective work and investigators will turn over, cars, do anything they can to find the people who commit crime.
Yes, I mean, there's so many questions that I have on this case now, though. She's 12, and you can see in the photo here, this is the surveillance video from the 7-Eleven. So she sneaks out of her house, she goes to the 7-Eleven to get, whatever, candy or soda or something. And she's on the phone, and according to the news, she's talking to her boyfriend, who's 13 years old. She's talking to her on the phone. So I know a lot of people are saying, oh, she went to meet these guys, she must have met them online. I don't think that's the case. Because if that was the case, why would you call your 13-year-old boyfriend to tell him what was going on in regards to that? And the kid, the boyfriend, says that he could hear her or two men engaging her, talking to her. So I don't think all that other stuff. I mean, I don't think any of that other stuff is true. That she was found online and she was convinced to come out. I don't think that's true.
I think this was just like what kids do. They sneak out of curfew. They want to sneak out of their house. And maybe she's going to meet the boyfriend, maybe not. But they saw opportunity. And whatever they told her to convince her to go with them is where it is. And that's one of the benefits. And this is how investigation is. She's on the phone. So they're tracking, there's a cell tracking thing that you geofencing, and probably the parents on the phone. So it was, what they did was great, what they were able to do. But what it comes down to is these two savages, that's what they are, found a child and were able to rape her and murder her. And regardless if she's sneaking out of curfew or anything, she's just doing what a lot of 12-year-old girls will do, is sneak out of the house. Apparently, these guys, again, one had an ankle monitor. That's the best part. They were caught at the border, and whatever politics about that, I'm not going to worry about. They caught at the border. One of them had on their ankle bracelet, the little ankle monitor, and he cut it off. So that these guys are not good guys. Well, I mean, how this issue of how they don't detain people. I mean, we're only basing our information on these people, on these two persons, based on what the United States has. We don't know who they really are unless we have databases. Venezuela sends us information, and we know that ain't happening. But, from an outsider perspective, is this another, country that just opened up the prisons and letting these guys out the door, and somehow they're coming up here? Because this is not the first time we've seen these illegals, if you want to call it illegal, whatever you want to call it. And I know some people like it, but these people did not belong here. They've been removed. The guy in New York was removed, came back. These guys should not be here. And if they were not here, she'd be alive. That's the end result. So we wouldn't have to be sitting there talking this conversation again and again. If they were not here, and if they were detained and vetted like they're supposed to, they wouldn't have been murdered. This child would be alive. She would have gone out to 7-Eleven, got her food, and came back to the house, or met with a boyfriend and got in trouble with her mom, and have her phone taken away. Instead, her life's taken away.
Yeah, it's unfortunately. I had yesterday. I had Matt McMahon on, who was the oldest. He and Rachel Morin's old. He was the father of the oldest child, Faye, and he's worried about this thing becoming a political football. And it seems to be now this case is going to be another one. And unfortunately, nothing will seem to get done. Right, so they will use these kids and use a name like Rachel in the politics speech, whatever. But then nothing ever happens. Nothing ever gets done. And that's part of the problem.
Yeah, it's just you say a name and that's it. But we know what a problem. There is a problem. We know that. And where is the will to stop that problem? And it isn't that hard. You're not asking to change the weather. You're not asking to I have my hair. You cut a hair. That's simple. This is not that hard if you actually have the will to do it. And you really have to realize that we're seeing this. And Joe, you've probably read articles too, that you're now having MS-13 members working with Russian mafia. And you're seeing these issues because they're being imported on a border that does not vet anybody. And all we ask for people to do is sign the guest book. And it doesn't seem to happen. And these alternatives to detention are failing, as we've seen, that we're letting these people go. And these guys were in that complex, apparently gesturing to women already. So they already were not acting properly. And I will say this, we've had cases, unfortunately, where, people who are not legally here, get arrested and there's no other removed. They should have been gone. These people should have been gone. Should not have been here.
Here was another disturbing thing. So the mayor, his name was John Whitmire. He actually came on the television and said, "I'm going to be watching the criminal justice system. These two do not deserve bail." To actually have to say that you have two individuals that is charged with the assault and murder of a 12-year-old, that you actually have to plead with the criminal justice system not to give bail, to me is absolutely insane. That's how, and people say, well, this is Texas. No, guys, this is Houston, and they were trying to declare themselves a sanctuary city on top of this. But the issue that comes down to is the mayor has to plead with the criminal justice system to keep people like this behind bars. To me, that's like, that didn't get a big enough story that it should have, but that's really what you're dealing with.
And you're seeing this. We saw it here in New York, that you have people who are not here, who have no residency, assaulting police officers. And the premise of bail is to maintain somebody in custody, to make sure they go appear in court. That's the reality to it. And also the dangerousness of the perpetrators. You would expect the dangerous perpetrators here would already say we shouldn't let them go. But are there people saying, well, they're not really arrested, not convicted, so they should be held pending. There should be a pretrial detention. But look what they've done. Look what they've done. Do you think there will be you think it's a safety issue that these guys go back out in the street? One who cut their bracelet off their ankle once they did what they did, and to say, well, they'll come back. How do you know? Where's the guarantee? There is no guarantee. And amazing, like I said, the mayor has to sit there and beg this. And the sanctuary city thing has to be revised, has to be addressed. Where you were working and I was working, where there was cooperation between the federal agencies and us. And as a sanctuary city, New York City has been banned to deal with, in any way, any of these federal agencies. We cannot, commingle in a sense. We arrest somebody that is, not here. We can't call the feds and say, listen, he's got to be removed, or he's got to be detained somehow to put him in a federal holding. No, we can't.
And the problem is, though, this goes beyond even this case, because it wouldn't matter what your status was. This was just something where, I mean, the city council in Houston tried to turn it into a sanctuary city, and the governor says if you do so, you're losing all your funding, and that was basically the end of that. But the issue that comes down to is that it's important that ICE knows about these things. But like I said, this goes beyond this issue. This would have gone back if this guy lived in Houston his whole life. He grew up there. That you would have to beg the criminal justice system to hold somebody like this.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
We've lost. I think this is where a lot of these criminal justice advocates have come in, and these reform advocates who are saying, and there is an idea to it, but the dangerousness of that person should automatically not be the argument's dead about, well, they're not been convicted, so they shouldn't be incarcerated. They shouldn't be held. These two people sexually assaulted, raped, and murdered a child. That's what they did. There's dangerousness that they could do it again if they haven't done it already somewhere else. So why would you even think that? And why would you have to actually say that? That is a telling and chilling sign of how society has really coddled criminality, as opposed to actually advocating for victims and victims' families. That's where I think it's been lost.
Yep. And that's where we're going to leave that, Dave. I want to thank you for your time. There is a couple of good shows coming up. You have Grizzly True Crime. You have Gisla's going to have a sadistic plastic surgeon on talking about on her show today. And in a few minutes, you can head over to the Shaming of Jay and/or Defense Diaries. I don't know who's actually doing the stream for the Karen Reed case. I can't wait for that case to be over with. My God, that one's. And then yesterday they're Turtle Boys, and they're fighting in front of pizzerias. I've had enough of these people. I really have.
Please.
And the issue that comes down to is hopefully by Friday we hear the end of that. Tomorrow at 8 a.m. I have Lauren Conlon returning, and we're going to get into the Karen Reed case, finding out exactly what's going to happen. And hopefully maybe tomorrow it goes to the jury. We'll find out. Dave, you hang out 1 second. Everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. We had over 220 people at one point watching this live, so I appreciate that. You guys have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon. See you tomorrow morning for roll call, 8 a.m., folks.